Hey guys, tonight we begin into a gentle medieval world with the Honeykeeper of Windmere Hollow. Follow Elswyth, a quiet woman who tends golden hives behind a chapel, where bees whisper messages to the spirit world. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're retuning in from and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see who is joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Our story today begins at the edge of a forgotten village, where cobbled lanes wend between mossy cottages, and the world seems caught in an endless spring. Just past the chapel, beyond the stained glass windows that glow with soft blue light at dusk, there is an orchard. It is not large, but it is old. The trees grow wide and kind, their branches like open arms, and their roots deep as memory. Underneath these trees live the bees, and among the bees lives a woman named Elswyth. She is known, to those few who speak of her, as the Honeykeeper of Windmere Hollow. Elswyth is quiet, gentle, the kind of woman who never raises her voice, not even to the bees. Each morning, she walks barefoot across the dewy grass, carrying a little copper pail for honey and a linen pouch for beeswax. Her dress is simple undyed wool, belted with braided hemp, and her hair is always pinned loosely beneath a wide straw hat, the brim lined with lavender to keep the flies away. But more than that, she smells like warmth. The warmth of slow-boiled salves and sun-warmed stone. The warmth of fresh-baked bread and beeswax melting by the hearth. She does not speak much to people, but she speaks always to the bees, and they speak back. Not with words, but with wings, with the soft hum of vibration in the air, with patterns in the way they dance among the blossoms. It is said she was born with bees sleeping in her crib, that they never once stung her. It is said that when the old chapel bell cracked, it was Elswyth who melted her wax and fixed the mold for its recasting. But it is also said that the bees of Windmere are no ordinary bees. Long ago, in the time before Windmere was called Windmere, before the chapel was built, and before any farmer dared plant his orchard there, the hollow was a sacred grove, a thin place, where the veil between the living and the spirit world was said to drift like morning mist. And in that place, bees were the messengers, carrying the whispers of the dead from blossom to blossom, and back again. It is said that if a beekeeper did not tell their bees when someone in the village had died, the bees would become restless. They would stop making honey. Sometimes they would vanish altogether, but Elswyth, she always told them. When the baker's wife passed last winter, she tied a strip of black ribbon to every hive. She whispered the name of the lost one into each box. The bees stilled, and then they hummed as one. You see, Elswyth doesn't just tend hives. She listens. She remembers. Each bee, to her, is sacred. Each hive, a cathedral. The wax she gathers is used not just for candles, but for healing balms and funeral rites, and, some say, for spells. But no one speaks that too loud. It was on a morning of slow golden fog that a stranger came to Windmere. Tall, pale, cloaked in ash-gray wool with silver fastenings. He did not speak much, but he watched Elswyth in the orchard, watched her bend gently toward each hive, watched the bees land on her wrists, her shoulders, even her cheek, and never once. Did they sting her? Now, dear listener, let the hum of the bees lull you. Let their steady rhythm calm your breath. In and out, like wings, like wind, like sleep itself. You are resting now in the orchard of Windmere. The breeze is warm and carries the scent of apple and wildflower. The bees are murmuring tales older than time. And Elswyth is near. She is lighting a beeswax candle, one made with her own hands, and placing it in the window of her cottage, so the spirits can find their way. Sleep gently now. You are safe among the trees, safe with the Honeykeeper, safe in Windmere Hollow. Let the hum carry you. Let the warmth hold you. And let dreams find you softly, sweetly, like the scent of blossoms on a breeze. The fog had come early that morning. It curled around the chapel spire like a ribbon, and clung to the orchard boughs like soft wool. Even the bees, usually up with the sun, took longer to stir from their waxy chambers. Elswyth had risen before dawn, as always. She'd lit a candle on her windowsill, not for the spirits today, but for clarity. There was something strange in the air, something quiet but not peaceful, something watching. The man in the mist stood at the edge of the orchard, still as the stone angel beside the chapel. He wore a cloak the color of ashes. His boots were damp with dew. His hands gloved, but shaking slightly gripped a walking stick made of dark yew wood. He didn't knock, didn't speak, only waited as though summoned. Elswyth saw him from between the hives. Her bees grew restless. Their hum thickened, the way it did before a storm. She raised one hand and whispered, "Easy now," and the hum softened. Obedient, she walked through the orchard with quiet steps, barefoot in the grass, her skirt brushing the thyme and creeping clover. When she reached the stranger, she did not ask who he was, only looked at him. Then at the mist that swirled behind. "You've lost someone," she said, her voice like a breeze through lace. The man nodded once. Inside her cottage, everything glowed golden. The shelves were lined with jars, salves, honeys, oils. Bundles of herbs hung from the ceiling. A kettle simmered low, releasing a warm breath of mint and chamomile. The man sat near the hearth, but did not remove his cloak. Elswyth poured tea into a carved wooden cup. She did not press him. She only waited. Finally, he spoke. "My wife passed 3 nights ago." His voice was low. Gravel over water. She always believed bees could carry messages to the other side. She used to keep a single hive behind our barn. Said they listened better than priests. He looked down at the tea, eyes shining faintly with tears he didn't shed. I tried to speak to them, but they flew away. Elswyth set her hand over his. Warmth met cold. Then we'll try again, she whispered. Here. She led him outside again, where the sun had begun to cut through the fog. The orchard shimmered. Bees floated lazily from blossom to blossom, their wings like stained glass in the light. Together, they walked to the largest hive. It stood like an altar rounded, tall and golden from sun and wax. Elswyth placed her hand over it and closed her eyes. She did not speak aloud, but her lips moved. A murmur, slow, sacred, the language of the hollow. The man stepped forward. He cleared his throat, unsure, and then, like breaking through stone, her name was Linneth. She loved bluebells and warm bread and morning rain. She never feared death, only forgetting. Please let her know I remember. A single bee crawled from the edge of the hive. It paused on the threshold, then lifted gently into the air and buzzed around his head once, twice, and drifted away. The man stared after it. Is that it? He asked, uncertain. Elswyth smiled. That is everything. That night, the bees hummed louder than usual. Elswyth didn't sleep. She stayed by the window, candle flickering low, listening. Listening for wings. Listening for spirits. And somewhere, not in the wind, not in the trees, but deep in the golden honeycombs of her hives, she heard Linneth's voice, a sigh of love, a farewell, and the bees carried it. Now rest again. Let the hum guide your breath in, and out let your body grow soft like moss beneath bare feet. You are lying now in the warm heart of Windmere Hollow. The bees are your lullaby, the blossoms your pillow, and the honey-sweet air your blanket. Sleep is safe here. Sleep is sacred. And you, dear listener, are held. 3 nights after the stranger had come and gone, a scent filled the hollow that only came once a year. The scent of the first bloom of wild lavender. It crept in through cracks in stone walls. It wound around windowsills and through chapel doors. And it whispered a gentle call. It is time. Elswyth rose just before dawn. She did not light the fire. She did not open the shutters. Instead, she stood barefoot in the dark and let the hush wash over her. Then she began to prepare for the ritual. From a shelf beneath her workbench, she pulled a wooden box covered in beeswax seals. Each seal was stamped with the sigil symbols not spoken anymore. Carefully, reverently, she broke them. Inside, rows of candles slept in beds of linen and dried yarrow. They were long, slim, golden. Not for light, but for listening. Candle ritual wax was not made for burning. Not exactly. It was made for remembering. Made for the spirit threads that weave between lives. Made for messages. That day, she brought the candles to the stone circle behind the chapel. Few in Windmere even knew it was there. 12 standing stones, moss-covered, older than the oldest tale, positioned so that the sun struck them only once a year on the first lavender bloom. She placed a candle at the base of each stone, one for sorrow, one for joy, one for longing, one for healing, and one for what has not yet come to pass. As she lit the first wick, the bees came. They did not swarm. They danced. Soft spirals through the air, their hum low and sacred. Each candle flame flickered in rhythm with their wings. And when Elswyth began to hum an old tune her grandmother taught her, the air shimmered. Time folded. The hollow grew still, but not empty, like a room holding its breath. Through the soft light, a figure emerged, not from the village, not from memory, but from somewhere else entirely. A young girl, pale hair like starlight, a wreath of dried thistle on her brow, eyes that saw everything and yet blinked with wonder. Elswyth watched as the girl walked barefoot into the center of the circle. The bees parted around her like leaves in water. The girl looked at Elswyth, head tilted. "You called me." Elswyth swallowed. "I lit the candle for what is to come." The girl nodded once. "Then I am it." They sat together in the circle. The flames danced gently. The bees hummed low. The earth pulsed with something not quite sound. Elswyth looked at the girl. "What is your name?" The girl smiled, slow and sad. "I haven't been given one yet. I am waiting for the world to speak it." Elswyth blinked. Her hands folded in her lap. "What should I do?" she whispered. The girl touched her arm. "Keep the bees. Tell them the names. Gather the wax and wait for the winds. The veil will thin again, and you must be ready." The girl stood. The bees gathered around her, forming a soft cloud. Then just as suddenly, she was gone. Only the thistle wreath remained, resting on a stone. Elswyth wept without sound. That night, back in her cottage, she melted the wax from the ritual candles. Each one was mixed with herbs: thyme for clarity, lavender for calm, sage for protection. She poured the new wax into small clay molds. Each was shaped like a seed. When they cooled, she set them in a linen pouch. These were not for sale, not for trade. They were for when the winds changed. And they would. Now let your breath match the rhythm of the candle flame. Inhale with the flicker. Exhale with the stillness. Let the warmth fill your chest. Let your limbs grow heavier. Let the hush of the stone circle lull you. You are not alone. The bees are watching. The flames are listening. And the future is patient. Sleep now, with thistle on your pillow and wax beneath your tongue. Let dreams find you. Let the veil thin gently as you drift. It had been weeks since the candle ritual in the stone circle. The bees were calm. The orchard had bloomed into full summer lush and humming, with heavy golden light dripping through the branches. Villagers passed by more often now, not to speak, but to leave bundles of herbs at Elswyth's gate, or a crust of bread, or a single feather. Small things, quiet offerings, gratitude, perhaps, or superstition. One morning, as dew clung to the grass like silver thread, a bell rang from the chapel. Once, twice, 3 slow, somber tolls. The widow's bell, a signal to the hollow. Someone had passed. The first to go since the stranger's wife. And the girl in the mist, Elswyth rose from her kneeling place beside the hive and dusted pollen from her skirt. She tied a black ribbon to the entrance of every hive and whispered the name of the one lost, Lorna, an old woman who baked oatcakes with honey, who spoke more to her goats than to other people, who once gifted Elswyth a comb made of horn. The bees paused their humming and resumed, low and slow. That afternoon, the village gathered for the burial. A simple wooden cart carried the wrapped body. The path to the chapel wound through the orchard, as it always did by tradition and by grace. As the cart passed the hives, Elswyth stepped forward. She held a beeswax taper, unlit, tied with twine and yarrow. With a soft bow, she placed it beside Lorna's hand. "Tell her she is remembered," Elswyth whispered to the bees. After the burial, the villagers returned to their homes, but Elswyth stayed. Inside the chapel, the light was dim and golden, filtering through dusty-stained glass. She knelt before the cracked bell, the one she had helped reforge with wax and faith. Her fingers traced the line in the metal where the fracture had been. Then she lit the taper she had given Lorna. The flame caught quickly, burning warm and even. It was then she heard it soft as breath, a voice behind her. "She remembered you." Elswyth turned, but the chapel was empty. Still, she smiled. That night, the bees danced long past dusk. Their hum was rich, like a lullaby sung beneath the stars. Elswyth sat outside with her candle, wrapped in a shawl of rough wool, watching the flames and the bees and the night sky overhead. She wasn't afraid. Of death, of spirits, of the veil. She had lived her whole life in its soft shadow. She was part of it just as much as the wax and the wings. Now let your own breath match the hum, soft and steady. Let the bell's echo fade far into the hills. You are here in the hollow where death is not an end, where honey keeps memories, where wax holds prayers. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let the hush gather round your thoughts. Let it take you deeper, into stillness, into peace. The days in Windmere grew longer. The sun lingered in the orchard until well past supper, brushing the treetops with pale gold before sinking softly behind the hills. Inside the hives, the bees worked steadily, building combs thick and perfect, filling each hexagon with honey that shimmered like amber wine. But Elswyth had begun to notice something unusual. A sound, a second hum, deeper than the bees. Not louder, but older. It came from the waking hive. Tucked beneath the oldest apple tree in the orchard, the waking hive was different from the others. It had no carvings, no ribbon markers. It was sealed with clay and wax, and Elswyth never touched it. Not since she was a girl. It was said the hive was once the resting place of a queen, not just a bee queen, but something older. A spirit of the hollow, a guardian. She had gone to sleep 100 years ago, and the bees sealed her in with comb and silence. No one disturbed it. Until now. That morning, Elswyth stood before it, barefoot and unsure. The hum had grown louder overnight. It pulsed beneath the bark like a heartbeat, a warm, golden vibration. And when she placed her palm against the surface of the hive, she felt it, breathing, slow and deep. Not her own, not human, and yet not frightening. She whispered, "Is it time?" The hive did not answer in words, but a crack appeared in the wax seal, and a single bee emerged larger than any she'd ever seen. Its wings glowed faintly. Its eyes shimmered like rain on stone. It circled Elswyth once, twice, and flew toward the chapel. Elswyth followed, heart quiet but fast. She passed beneath the old bell tower, where shadows pooled like spilled ink. And inside the chapel, she saw them, the bees, hundreds of them. They hovered in silence perfect, glowing stillness, and in the center of the chapel floor, they had formed a shape, not a swarm, a circle, a signal. Elswyth stepped into the center and knelt. A soft wind stirred, though there was no window open. The candle on the altar lit without flame, and a voice, not quite spoken, not quite sung, rose all around her. "It is time." Time. For what? She did not ask. She only listened, and the message came not in words, but in memory. A flood of images, honey pouring into cupped hands, names whispered over sleeping hives, children yet unborn, spirits yet uncalled. The waking hive was stirring for a reason. Something was shifting. The hollow would need her. Elswyth bowed her head to the stone floor. "I am ready," she whispered. The bees dispersed, as gently as snowflakes, and the candle on the altar burned steady and tall. Back at her cottage that night, she opened a leather-bound journal she hadn't touched in 10 years. Inside were pages of rituals, maps of energy, wax diagrams and sigils from the old tongue. At the very end, there was a blank page. She dipped her quill in honey-thick ink and wrote, "The waking hive has stirred." Then she slept, and for the first time in many years, her dreams were not silent. Now, breathe again with the hive. Let the hum settle into your bones. Feel your chest rise and fall like slow wing beats. You are not just listening to this story. You are part of it. You are resting in the hollow, where time drips like honey, where the past and future curl around the orchard trees, and where the hives speak, if you know how to hear them. Let sleep take you now. Let the waking hive hum its secrets to your dreams. The village had nearly forgotten it. An old midsummer rite, once held beneath the full moon when the lavender was in its last bloom, and the bees flew higher than the chapel spire. It had not been celebrated in Elswyth's lifetime, but the waking hive had stirred, and the signs had returned. Bees circling in spiral patterns over the orchard, white feathers falling from the sky, though no birds were in sight. The chapel bell chiming once at midnight with no hand to ring it. Elswyth knew it was time. The preparations began in silence, not with fanfare, but with purpose. She plucked the last of the elderflowers at dawn, hung honeysuckle garlands from the standing stones, anointed each hive with warm oil pressed from apple seeds and clover. And beneath the wide oak tree near her cottage, she laid out long strips of linen, soaked them in beeswax, and carved them with symbols known only to the Hollow. These would be worn as veils, for when the veil between worlds grows thin, you do not gaze too directly, not even the bees do. As twilight fell, the villagers gathered, quietly, respectfully, with wide eyes. Many had not seen Elswyth in the village square in years, but tonight she stood in the center, veiled in gold linen, her fingers stained with wax and pollen. Children held lanterns made from dried gourds. Elders carried bells on braided cords. And in the orchard, every hive had a glowing beeswax candle before it. No one spoke, and when the first star rose above the chapel spire, the humming began. It started with the bees, not just from Elswyth's hives, but from the hills, the marsh reeds, even the crumbled hollow tree at the edge of the wood. Bees from every corner of the hollow returned. And then the air changed. It thickened not heavy, but sacred, and into that golden breath of night, Elswyth raised her hands. She did not speak. She only hummed. A deep, slow tune older than language. It wove through the trees, through skin and soul, and the bees joined her, wings in rhythm, hearts in time, a harmony of hums. Windmere Hollow does not sleep like other places. It slumbers in rhythm slow and sacred like the hush between heartbeats. In the days after the festival, a gentle quiet settled over the orchard. No footsteps on the path, no bells from the chapel, only the occasional breeze weaving through apple branches, and the bees humming low lullabies in their golden combs. Elswyth walked slower now, not out of weariness, but because the air itself had become thick with peace. She gathered honey, as always, but paused more often to watch the pollen drift in sunlight. She turned wax over the fire, but let it melt longer, listening to the soft hiss and pop as it warmed. The hollow had given her something, not in words, but in the way stillness can speak. And she was listening. At night, her dreams became soft gardens. She dreamed of trees that whispered her name, of bees that flew in spirals around sleeping spirits, weaving honey into halos, and of a door in the earth, a door made not of wood or stone, but of scent and sound and memory. It pulsed with life, and it was waiting. One morning, before the sun had fully risen, Elswyth followed her dream. She left her cottage with no lantern, no tools, no shoes, only a beeswax candle in her hand, and the scent of lavender trailing behind her. She walked past the orchard, past the stone circle, past the chapel, now covered in morning mist, and into the hollow behind the old mill. There, beneath a tree older than names, was the door. It looked just as it had in her dream, barely visible, unless you knew how to look. The grass grew in a perfect spiral above it. The soil smelled like honeycomb. And the bees had gathered there, not swarming, but waiting. Elswyth knelt before the door and placed her candle on the ground. She whispered, "I have kept the hives. I have carried the names. I have told the bees. The spiral of grass stirred. The door opened without a sound. Inside was not darkness. It was deep light, golden, warm, like sunlight filtered through closed eyelids. The space was round, low, earthen like the inside of a hive. And in the center sat a shape, neither woman nor bee, neither living nor dead. It shimmered, pulsing softly, and spoke with no voice. You have remembered. Elswyth bowed low. The shape continued. The hollow is not held by walls. It is held by memory. The wax, the wings, the names. You have done well. Elswyth's voice was barely more than breath. What happens now? The shape replied, now we rest. And in that moment, Elswyth felt it. The bees pausing in their combs, the trees slowing their breath, the spirits curling inward like roots in winter, the hollow sleeping, not ending, not vanishing, just sleeping. Elswyth stayed there a long while, in the golden hush. Then she placed her candle beside the glowing shape. It flickered once, then steadied, and slowly she returned to the surface. From that day on, the orchard was even quieter. The villagers still left bread and herbs at her gate. The chapel still rang the bell when someone passed. The bees still flew, soft and slow. But Elswyth? She no longer spoke aloud. She only hummed. And the hollow listened. Now, let your body become as the hollow. Let your thoughts slow, like wax cooling in the mold. Let your breath become smooth and silent. The hollow sleeps, and so can you. You've listened well. Now it is your turn to dream. Curl inward like a petal before dawn. Let the hush carry you. Let the bees guard your sleep. Weeks passed in peace. The hollow slept, but not in silence. Every now and then, something new would surface. A flower blooming out of season. A bee with wings that shimmered silver instead of gold. A sudden hush in the orchard, just before rain. Elswyth knew these were signs. The kind the hollow gives when it dreams. She had learned not to ask too many questions, only to listen and record. In her little cottage beside the hearth, she kept a box made of dark elder wood. Inside, a collection of candles she had never lit, each one made from the wax of a different season. Some pale and soft, from spring clover blooms. Others thick and rich, from the heat of midsummer flowers. One evening, just before dusk, she noticed something she had never seen before. One of the summer candles stored for years had cracked open. Inside was not just wax, it was paper, tiny, rolled, sealed with a mark she did not know. Her hands trembled slightly as she uncurled it, and on the page was writing. 3 words, ancient, gentle, powerful. She still listens. That was all. No signature, no explanation, but the wax around the message shimmered faintly, as if remembering its own creation. Elswyth stared at it for a long while, and then, slowly, deliberately, she brought the candle to the hearth, lit it, watched it burn. As the flame consumed the wax, The air in the cottage thickened, not with smoke, but with sound. A faint hum, like hundreds of voices murmuring at once. Not harsh, not frightening, just old. She closed her eyes, and in her mind she saw the chapel, the orchard, the stone circle, and beneath it all, the hollow's roots. Alive, listening, waiting. She stayed awake that night, seated cross-legged before the dying candle, not speaking, only hearing. At dawn, she took what remained of the melted wax and pressed it into a small mold shaped like a bee's wing. When it cooled, she tucked it into a pouch with a sprig of thyme. It was time to begin recording again, but not in ink, not in books, in wax. The secret in the wax was something only the Hollow's keepers knew. That wax could carry memory, not just light, but thought. When made in silence, when stirred with intention, when cooled by breath and moonlight, wax could hold secrets, not forever, but long enough. Elswyth gathered honeycomb from the waking hive, melted it over ashwood flame, and whispered names into the pot. Not her own, not anyone living, but names she didn't know how she knew. When the wax cooled, she carved each piece with a symbol, simple, spiraling, ancient, then sealed them in clay pots, not to be opened soon, but someday. Rest now. Let the wax cool inside you. Let your breath flow slowly in, and out. Let each exhale be like a candle's breath. You are not holding this story. You are floating in it. Let the secrets pass gently around you, like bees circling flowers you cannot see. Sleep, dear listener. There is wisdom in the wax, and it will wait for you. It had been many seasons since the waking hive had opened, and the festival of wings had rekindled its ancient hum. But the hollow had returned to its long breath, a kind of half-sleep. Elswyth moved through her days with the patience of one who knows time is circular. She harvested honey, pressed wax into molds, listened, always listening. But something in the silence had changed. There were no more bees gathering at the chapel, no spirals in the orchard skies, no whispered names on the wind. The hollow had grown too quiet, and Elswyth felt it. One dusk, just after the sky turned rose and smoke-gray, Elswyth stood before the sealed hive at the orchard's far edge. Not the waking hive. This one was different, low to the ground, covered in wild moss. A hive she had never opened. It was passed to her by her grandmother, and her grandmother before that. It had no markings. No bees entered, no bees left. But it was warm, and inside, something pulsed, alive. She lit a beeswax taper and placed it beside the hive. The moss glowed softly, and from the base, a single whisper crept into the air. It's time. That night, Elswyth dreamt of a room made entirely of honeycomb. Its walls breathed, its ceiling pulsed with light, and in its center stood a woman cloaked in dark linen, her eyes glowing with soft flame, her hands cupped around a single sleeping bee. "You have kept the names," the woman said, "but memory is not enough." Elswyth bowed her head. "What more is there?" The woman smiled, like fog curling in candlelight. To carry the names is to remember. To speak the names is to keep them. But to become the names, she leaned in, voice fading like smoke, is to serve as the spirit keeper. Elswyth woke before dawn, breath steady. She understood. The hollow didn't just need a keeper of bees. It needed a keeper of what the bees carried. Memory, meaning, soul. In the days that followed, Elswyth began to prepare. She gathered not wax, but clay from the riverbank, molded small figures, simple, hollow. Each one she whispered to, not with her voice, but with her breath. She placed drops of honey inside their chests, pressed in a single curled petal from the orchard, and sealed them with wax from the quiet hive. When she was finished, she placed the figures in a ring beneath the tree where the veil was thinnest. Then she waited. The first spirit arrived at sunset, a shimmer of air, a scent of old feathers and rain on slate, not frightening. Familiar, others followed. Not many, just those who still remembered themselves. They came without speaking, knelt before the wax-sealed figures, and slept, not a restless sleep, but the deep sleep of being seen. Elswyth did not weep. She simply lit a candle for each one, and stood watch. Let your own spirit rest now. Let the hush rise like warm breath from earth. There are names you have carried all your life. Some you know, some you do not. Let them rest tonight. Let the bees hum around them. Let the spirit keeper hold them, and know that you are remembered. Sleep now. The hollow watches. Not every spirit in Windmere Hollow remembers its name. Some have faded into mist. Some linger in the branches of trees that no longer bear fruit. Others float on the surface of the pond behind the mill, seen only by moonlight when the water lies still as glass. Elswyth knew this, and though the hollow slept peacefully now, she could still feel the tug, a yearning, not loud, but deep. The forgotten were waiting, so she began again, not with wax, not with clay, but with light, lanterns. She made them the old way, with hollowed birch bark, dried thyme stems, and wax-soaked twine. Inside each, she placed a coil of golden wax and a strip of linen marked with one thing. Not a name, but a question. Do you remember the orchard? Did someone sing you to sleep? Were you ever kissed in the rain? Questions the heart might answer, even when the name is lost. She lit the first lantern on the edge of the riverbank, just before the sun dipped low. It floated gently, pulled by current and wind. Then she lit another, and another, until 12 soft lights glided over the water. Some drifted toward the reeds. Others circled in place, spinning slowly. And then a figure stepped from the fog. It was not a person, not in the way people usually appear. It shimmered at the edges, like heat over stone or candlelight behind linen. It bent toward a lantern, and Elswyth heard it, a whisper, not from lips, not from air, but from the hollow itself. Yes, I remember the song. And just like that, a bee rose from the reeds. It flew in a spiral. Once, twice, then disappeared into the orchard. The next evening, Elswyth sent more lanterns, some into the pond, some into the woods, one beneath the chapel's bell tower. Each one carried a question. Each one found someone. The forgotten were not truly forgotten. They were only waiting for the right kind of remembering. Not shouting, not prayers, but small, soft flickers of curiosity, like bees searching for familiar blooms. After 7 nights, the hollow glowed. Lanterns bobbed on water and hung from branches. The orchard looked like a second sky, stars drifting low among the trees. The villagers began to leave their own questions, written on scraps of bark or stone. Was your favorite flower blue? Did you have a brother? Did someone miss you when you were gone? And the bees carried these questions, folding them into the golden combs of their hives. Elswyth could hear them murmuring, the way stories do, when they've finally found a listener. Now breathe with the river. Let your thoughts become lanterns, not burdens, not answers, just small glowing questions. Let them float away from you, one by one, until only peace remains. You are not forgotten. No part of you is ever lost. Sleep now. Under the lantern-lit trees of the hollow, you are held. You are home. Elswyth had not visited the waking hive since midsummer, not because she had forgotten, but because some doors do not open when knocked. They open when they are ready. And one crisp morning, as the fog curled low over the orchard floor, she felt it, a low vibration beneath her solace. The scent of warmed honey in the air, though no fire had been lit, and the whisper of wings. But no bees flew, not outside, not yet. She followed the hum through the orchard, past trees heavy with late apples, past hives quiet in their autumn rest, until she reached the base of the oldest tree, the waking hive. The seal of wax she had placed there many seasons ago was gone. In its place, a trail of golden comb, spiraling outward like a sun unfurling. Elswyth knelt, heart slow. The hum grew deeper. She placed one hand on the hive's wood. It pulsed warm, alive, then split open. Inside was not darkness, but light. The same deep, golden light that lived in the spirit keeper's chamber. And there, at the center, was her, the last queen. She was not a bee, not entirely, and not a woman either. She was the hollow made whole, cloaked in layered petals, her skin dusted in pollen, her eyes like polished amber. She lay curled inside the hive, as if in a cradle of memory. And when Elswyth leaned closer, the queen opened her eyes. Time slowed, breath stopped, the orchard fell silent, and the queen spoke without voice. You have called me. Elswyth did not answer with words. She bowed. The queen unfurled one hand slender. Glowing and inside it was a single drop of honey. Clear, luminescent, alive. The hollow is changing, the queen whispered, her voice like wind through grass. The veil grows thin. The forgetting grows louder. You must choose. Elswyth's throat tightened. Choose what? The queen tilted her head. To remain, or to become. The choice was not explained, but Elswyth understood. She could remain tending wax, whispering names, guarding the hives for years to come. Or she could become part of the hollow itself, the next keeper, or the last. A choice made not in pride, but in peace. She reached for the honey, touched it with the tip of her finger, and felt a flutter of every bee wing in the orchard, the laughter of a child who once walked these fields, the weeping of the spirit who had no name, the folding of wings over centuries, and then silence, not emptiness, just stillness. Elswyth closed her eyes and whispered, "I will become." When the villagers awoke the next morning, they found the orchard glowing, every hive gently humming, and from the waking hive, bees emerged in a spiral so perfect, it drew the sky downward in awe. Elswyth was never seen again, but she was not gone. She had become something more. Each spring, the first bloom of lavender would carry her hum. Each candle lit in the chapel burned a little longer. Each bee that danced through the hollow knew her name. Let your body become light now, like wax in a flame, like honey on the tongue. You are safe to rest, safe to dream, safe to become whatever your soul remembers. The queen has returned to sleep. The hollow holds you close. Sleep now, dear one. You are not alone in the orchard. After Elswyth disappeared into the hollow, the orchard remained unchanged, yet everything felt different. The villagers still tended to the chapel, still left offerings by the stone circle, still whispered blessings to the bees. But they spoke of Elswyth now as one might speak of a season that has passed, warmly, softly, and with a touch of awe. And in the chapel, something strange was discovered. Behind the altar, tucked in a hollow where light never reached, sat a single beeswax candle, smooth, untouched, bound in white linen thread and sealed with the mark of the waking hive. It had no scent, no wick, but it pulsed gently warm, alive. No one dared move it. They simply called it the candle that never burns. For weeks it remained still. Then the dreams began. The first came to the chapel keeper, an old man with cloudy eyes. He dreamt he was inside the hive, walking among golden halls. Each step echoed like music on combed air. The next dream came to a midwife. In hers, bees whispered instructions for an herb that had been forgotten. She woke and found it growing beneath her window. More dreams followed, each gentle, each vivid, each leading the dreamer to remember something they didn't know they had forgotten. And always at the end of the dream, the image returned, a candle, unlit, but glowing from within. One girl, just 10 years old, sat before the candle every morning. She never touched it, never spoke. She only hummed. A song her grandmother used to sing. One day, she fell asleep at the altar. When she woke, there was honey on her palms, and a single word carved faintly into the floorboards beneath her. Keep. The hollow was changing again, not with sound, but with stillness, and the villagers understood, without needing to say it aloud, that the candle wasn't meant to be used. It was meant to be witnessed, a quiet flame within the self, a memory held in wax. They built a small table around it, left lavender bundles and folded paper prayers. Some wept there, others laughed softly. Most simply sat and breathed. And sometimes, just sometimes, the candle glowed a little brighter, not because someone lit it, but because someone remembered. Years passed. The orchard grew wild at its edges. Bees still returned to the old combs. Children grew and left and returned again. And always, the candle remained, unlit, unmoved, whole. Now you may rest beside the candle too. You don't need to light it. Just breathe near it. Let your thoughts melt like wax. Your worries fall away like old petals. The hollow holds its light quietly, just like you hold your soul. Soft, unspoken, steady. Sleep, dear one. The candle never burns, because you are the flame. The boy's name was Avayan. He was the youngest son of the village baker, a quiet child with eyes the color of dusk. He often wandered alone, especially in the hour before supper, when the air still held the warmth of day, but the shadows stretched long and gentle. He did not speak often, not out of shyness, but because the world already said so much. He listened to bees, to the way they spoke in loops and spirals, to the way the trees seemed to lean together when no one was looking. And one evening he followed a sound, a hum, low and steady, not from a hive, but from a tree. It stood at the edge of the hollow, near the old mill pond, broad and ancient, with bark that peeled like scrolls. Its trunk split wide open, revealing a hollow so dark and deep. It seemed to lead underground. No one had paid it much mind before, but Evan saw it differently. He stepped close, placed his ear to the opening, and heard a voice, not in words, not loud, but clear. You remember me. He stepped back, heart fluttering, not in fear, but in recognition. The tree was speaking the way dreams do, in feelings, in memory, in sound that wraps around you instead of striking through. Evan returned the next day, and the day after that. He brought honey-soaked bread and whispered stories to the hollow. He told the tree about his favorite book, his sister's soft singing, the way the bees danced in the orchard when it rained. And the tree listened, always. One day, a single honeybee flew from the hollow. Its wings were torn at the edges. Its flight was slow. It landed on Avon's palm. He did not move, and when it finally took off again, it flew toward the chapel. That night, Avayan dreamt of the orchard, of the spirit keeper, of the candle that never burned, and of the tree, which in his dream opened wide, revealing a staircase carved in wax and bark. At the bottom, a room of bees gathered around a small boy, humming his name. He woke with a single word on his lips, Keeper. Avayan did not tell anyone, but he began to spend more time with the bees. He watched them more closely, whistled as he walked among the hives. learned their rhythms. And when a traveler passed through and asked about the hum at the edge of the villagers only smiled. That's just the hollow talking to the boy. Years would pass before they knew what he had become. But even as a child, the hollow knew. The bees knew. The tree knew. He was not a replacement for Elswyth. He was something new. Something grown from the soil of memory, the wax of silence, the breath of the forgotten. He was the next note in the hymn. And now, dear listener, rest like Avian by the tree. No need to speak. No need to explain. Just let your breath move with the hum. Let your thoughts drift like bees through the orchard. You are not lost. You are growing. Even now, in your sleep, the hollow is listening. Winters in Windmere Hollow were not harsh. They arrived like old friends, quiet and expected. Frost touched the orchard slowly, with silver fingers. The bees retreated deep into their hives. The chapel bell rang only on the first snow and the last. Most villagers rested, gathered stories, mended quilts, lit candles whose flames held the memory of warmer months. But this winter, something unusual happened. A scent drifted from the orchard. Not smoke, not wood. Bloom, faint, sweet, almost like elderflower and wild mint. But that was impossible. Nothing bloomed in December. And yet there it was, a trail of scent on the breeze. And in the very center of the orchard, beneath the bare-limbed apple trees, a single patch of green had broken through the snow. The villagers gathered, hushed and careful. They found a flower none could name. Its petals shimmered like frozen honey. Its center glowed with soft golden light. And bees just 3 circled above it, moving slow as if sleepwalking. Evan was the first to step forward. He knelt beside the bloom and whispered, "I remember you." The flower opened wider, and beneath it, in the earth, was something buried. He brushed the frost aside with careful fingers. There, pressed into the ground like a heartbeat long ago, was a wax seal. Not a candle, not a lantern, just a shape warm to the touch, pulsing like a memory returning. He picked it up and heard a voice, clear, steady, Elswyth's voice. In the stillness, bloom. In the dark, shine. In forgetting, remember. In silence, sing. The flower stayed open for 1 full day. Just enough time for the hollow to remember her name again. By morning, the bloom had vanished. The wax seal, too. But the feeling remained that nothing was ever truly gone. Only waiting beneath the snow for love to warm it back into being. That winter, more strange blooms followed, tiny at first, then fuller, like lanterns buried in the earth. No two the same, each one releasing a scent of something someone had once loved, a song, a face, a place. It was as though the hollow had begun to remember itself, and with every bloom, more hearts opened, more silence cracked, more dreams whispered their way back into the waking world. The bees began flying earlier in spring. Children began humming without knowing why. And the chapel's candle, yes, the one that never burned, began to glow just slightly warmer. No flame, just warmth, as if some seed had been planted long ago and had finally bloomed. Now rest. Let the frost drift gently over your thoughts. Let the hush of winter wrap around your chest. But know deep inside you, a bloom is waiting. It doesn't need the sun, or noise, or permission. Only love, only time, only stillness. Sleep now, and let your petals open quietly in the dark. The hollow remembers you. No one remembered when the chapel bell had last rung. Not truly. There were stories that it had once told for each season's turning, that it chimed whenever a spirit passed through, that it only rang when the bees gave their blessing. But for many years, it had hung in stillness, its rope frayed, its bronze dulled, until the morning the hives began to sing. It started in the waking hive, a sudden harmonic hum that echoed deeper than usual, not a warning hum, nor a working one. It was something older, something layered. Avon was the first to hear it. He paused beside the hive, tilting his head like the bees often did. And then, it happened. The chapel bell rang, not loud, not forced, but clear, a single golden chime. The village froze, not in fear, but in wonder. The bell had no rope. No hand had touched it. No wind strong enough had stirred. It had simply rung. That night, the hum in the hives returned, and Avon followed the sound. He walked through the orchard in moonlight, barefoot on the cold earth. The hives glowed faintly, and inside one smaller than the waking hive, older than the rest, he found something strange. Not honey, not bees. A bell, tiny, no bigger than a walnut, carved of beeswax, etched with spirals like the ones Elswyth had once pressed into her candles. He picked it up, and it rang, a sound like glass kissed by air, delicate, pure, and all the hives answered, not with noise, but with vibration. The entire orchard pulsed in response. Avon understood then. The bells were not just metal, not just tradition. They were keys, tuning forks to memory, callers of spirit. And this one, the wax bell, had been hidden inside the hive so that it could one day awaken again, not with fire, but with presence. He carried it to the chapel, placed it beside the great bell that had rung that morning, and waited. The next day, others began to bring bells of their own, some old, some found in drawers, some carved, some forged. They placed them at the altar, not to ring them, but to be near them, to listen with them. And slowly, the chapel became a hive of sound, not noise, but possibility, a room full of unspoken songs. And sometimes, when someone knelt alone in the pews, when someone lit a candle and whispered to the wax, a bell would chime softly, just once, as if to say, I hear you. Now let yourself ring quietly. Let your breath be the bell. Let the hum beneath your ribs sing once, softly. You are not empty. You are a vessel of memory, a keeper of sound. Rest now, and let the hollow ring through you. The bell does not need to be heard by all. only by you, and it already has. The days grew shorter. Frost crowned the tips of the orchard's last leaves. The bees slipped deeper into their dreams. But the hollow was awake, not in the loud way of cities or the restless stirrings of people. It was awake like memory is hidden, warm, quietly alive beneath the surface. And the villagers began to feel it, in dreams, in sense, in the way their breath fogged the air and curled into shapes they somehow recognized. The hollow was remembering, and in doing so, it remembered them. The bell in the chapel rang once more, not for death, not for celebration, just once at dusk, like a sigh of relief. That night, the candles in the windows burned longer than usual, and people spoke a little more softly, moved a little more slowly, as if something sacred had walked past them and brushed their shoulder without a sound. A Vayan walked through the orchard just before dawn. He had grown taller now, his voice deeper, but still quiet, still listening. He touched each hive in silence. He left petals at the base of the waking hive, and then, beneath the tree where Elswyth once whispered her names, he knelt and pressed his palm to the soil. It was warm and pulsing, a rhythm older than heartbeat, older than fire. From the earth, a single honeybee emerged, its wings dusted with frost. It climbed onto his hand, waited, and then flew up, up into the trees. Evain smiled. The hollow remembered. In homes across the village, people found small tokens waiting for them. A piece of wax shaped like a spiral, tucked behind a doorframe. A single bee wing pressed between pages of an old book. A name softly spoken aloud in an empty room. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone understood. The hollow had given something back. Children began to play games with rules they'd never been taught. They hummed tunes no one remembered teaching. Elders stirred in their sleep, murmuring to long-lost lovers. Even the animals walked slower. The bees, when they returned in spring, flew different paths, sacred paths, spiraling between the bell and the chapel, the bloom and the tree, the hive and the child. And Elswyth's hum was heard in all of it, not as sound, but as presence. Windmere Hollow was not a place anymore. It was a memory that held the living, a lantern that never burned, a story that never ended, a hum in the roots, and in every breath. It remembered you. Now, dear dreamer, rest in the hollow's memory. You don't need to hold on to anything. The hollow holds you. Let your mind drift. Let your breath become part of the land. You are remembered. You always have been. Sleep now, and let the orchard dream of you. There was a legend in Windmere Hollow, an old one, that beneath the mill pond so still, so dark, there slept a hive untouched by air or flame. No one had seen it. No one had sought it. Because some things, the elders said, are not hidden to be found. They are hidden to be remembered. But after the winter blooming, after the chapel bell and the child who spoke with trees, the legend began to stir again. It came first in dreams. People dreamt of water, of bees made of shadow, of a slow heartbeat beneath the reeds, and in every dream the same thing, a shape glowing beneath the surface. Not a reflection, but a home. Avayan was the one who finally listened. He walked the lake's edge just after twilight, when mist began to bloom on the surface like breath on glass. He did not call, did not search. He simply waited, and then the water parted, not like a splash, but like a curtain drawn by invisible hands. And below the surface, for the briefest moment, he saw it, a hive made of stone and gold, rooted into the lake bed. Its combs pulsed with light, soft, steady, rhythmic, not from flame, not from sun, but from memory, from stillness. He stepped into the water. It was not cold. It welcomed him like the hollow did, without noise, without question. The deeper he went, the more the world above faded. And when he opened his eyes again, he was inside. The hive beneath the lake was not silent. It sang, low like whale song, layered like the folds of a dream. Bees moved slowly here. Their wings stirred the water as if it were air. They did not sting. They carried memory, pain, joy, forgotten names, unspoken wishes, the things people lost, but never truly let go of. In the center of the hive was a single, massive honeycomb. But instead of wax, it was made of crystal. And inside each cell, a memory flickered, a child's laugh, a last goodbye, a hand held in silence. Heaven placed his palm against it and felt them all. Every soul the hollow had ever held, not trapped, but preserved, like petals in resin. When he returned to the surface, no one asked where he had been. They knew. They saw the stillness in his eyes, the echo of water in his breath. And from that day on, the pond was never just a pond. People brought small offerings, flowers, candles, coins, and sometimes the water hummed back. On moonless nights, some claimed they saw bees made of light floating just beneath the surface, moving in spirals, weaving memory, keeping watch. The hive beneath the lake had always been there, not waiting to be found, but waiting to be felt. Now let yourself float too, not with effort, with trust. The lake beneath you holds more than water. It holds what you've left behind and keeps it safe. You are not forgotten. You are simply resting in the deep. Sleep now. The hive will hold you. The hollow had changed, not with thunder, not with noise, but like a field of snow that melts quietly beneath the sun. The bees flew in slower spirals now. The trees hummed deeper. The chapel's candles burned steadier longer. And the people no longer asked where Elswyth had gone, because they understood. She was everywhere, in the blooms that arrived out of season, in the names that whispered themselves back into dreams, in the silence between one breath and the next. But there was one thing still waiting, one final piece, a lantern that had not yet been lit. Heaven found it in the tree at the center of the orchard, the same tree where Elswyth had once whispered to the bees. It had split at its base, revealing a hollow wrapped in ivy. Inside, resting atop a nest of dried petals and wax, was a lantern, unlike any he'd seen. It was not made of bark, or clay, or glass. It was woven from strands of honeycomb and hair and shadow. It pulsed faintly, unlit, but alive, waiting. He brought it to the chapel, placed it in the center of the altar where the candle that never burned once stood. Then he waited. That night, no one slept. Not because they were afraid, but because the air had changed. It felt full, like a held breath, like a story about to speak. And just before dawn, without touch or spark, the lantern lit, not with fire, with memory. It cast no shadow, but wherever its light fell, something returned. Laughter long forgotten. Footsteps of those who once walked the orchard paths. A song sung long ago, half finished, now carried to its final note. And Elswyth's voice, no longer a whisper, but a presence. You remembered. The hollow did not cheer. It did not weep. It simply held, like arms around a dreamer, like bees gathering around the last bloom of summer, like wax shaping itself into the shape of a soul. The keeper's lantern was not meant to guide others. It was meant to guide home. And everyone, in every way that mattered, had arrived. From that day forward, the lantern glowed, not always visibly, but in the faces of those who remembered the hum of the trees, in the hands that carved new hives for spring, in the hearts that knew silence did not mean absence. It was not the end of the story, just the place where the story curls in on itself and begins again. And now, dear one, close your eyes completely. Let everything go. Let the hush return. You've wandered far, but never alone. The hollow remembers. The hive hums your name, and the keeper's lantern glows gently in the dark, waiting for you to rest. Sleep now. You are home.